do you have?
One.
Were you living together?
Yes.
So you used one car.
Mm-hmm.
Great. You owe him the money. He's not going to be out of pocket because of you. That's outrageous. You breached the contract that you had with him to keep the payments on the car going.
Well, there was no contract.
Yes, there was. There's
Not
a verbal contract.
There was no verbal contract.
Miss Elwood, you have to understand something.
But there
By
wasn't.
making... Hey, shut up and listen. You have one mouth and two ears for a reason. Do you understand?
Yes, I do.
By making the payments after you broke up, on and off for 7 months, including your boyfriend making the payments when you couldn't, it was a statement that there was, in fact, a contract. As he indicated, that you were taking the car and you were going to make the payments. You didn't take the car and not make any payments.
I only took the car because he had no license.
You took the car to use. You could have sold it and not driven it for an additional 7 months.
I couldn't sell it. It would have been upside down.
Don't tell me you couldn't have. You could have sold it, and maybe at that time it wouldn't have been this kind of deficit if you sold it, because it would have been 2 years newer. But you did, in fact, have a contract. It didn't have to be a written contract. You had a contract with him. And the way the law knows that is, one, common sense, that if you broke up, he's not giving you a car and say, here, take it when I owe thousands of dollars on this car. I have no contact with you, but I'm going to continue to pay for this car just because I'm a nice guy. Mr. Alvarado isn't that much of a yutz. Second, you made payments on it. Now do you understand? Now you have a mouth and 2 ears. All I'm asking you is, do you understand?
Yes, ma'am.
You understand? Good. Judgment for the plaintiff for the amount of $5,000. That's all. Thank you.
Parties are excused. Let's step out.
Well, it's plain and simple, you know. That's the decision that should have been made.
Hey, you know, it happens.
You know, I hope you learn.